Greetings wherever you are situated. My name is Kaya Shivers, and welcome to Ark Republic News. We are here with Dr. Sherice J Nelson to talk about a very critical issue, and that is Ukraine and Russia. How are you doing today, Dr. Nelson?
I'm doing well.
All right. Now, usually I call you Sherice, but I needed to start with Dr. Nelson. Thank you for sitting in to give us this insight about what is going on in this border tension and crises that might escalate. We hope not.
We hope not.
Let's embark on the Ark Republic to hear current news that's published. More than gossip and chatter, covering current affairs that matter. We talk issues with professional views, all keeping you in queue. We wanted a higher vibe for these days and times to free the voices and minds, reporting the sign of the times so all can build. Let's shine, yeah.
When the Ukraine and Russia, the conversations about the border tensions begin to uptick again, I said, I need to talk to Dr. Nelson. I really need to talk to Dr. Nelson. First off is that rarely do you see people who look like us in these spaces to talk about international relations, because it's not situated in Africa or in some, in the global South
or not even that. Let me just be real. Let me just be real. They discourage scholars from studying it. Let's just be
really.
Oh, absolutely.
Why?
This is what they do. So international relations as a subfield in political science is 92% white.
And
it
sounds like anthropology.
Yes, it's 92% white, and then I think it's like 85% white male. Like it's abysmal. But here's the reason why: because international relations deals theoretically. Comparative politics deals country to country. So even when you study international relations as a subfield, they push you then into comparative politics so that you can do those global South issues, or you can concentrate then on the continent of Africa, right? So that you can be in the comparative space and not in the international relations space where you can actually change theoretical frameworks. So this is all. So let me just say to you that that's a structural thing by design, because they limit the careers of Blacks who even study it, if that makes sense. There's very few of us that even can get any level of traction. So that's one, which is why in many ways, although many people do not believe in her politics, Condoleezza Rice was an exception because she studied the Soviet Union and was given or was allowed to sit in some very high seats because of that study, right? And that is an absolute rarity. We haven't seen another Black woman do what she's done.
Right. No, I respect her gangster on that. You cannot take that away from her.
You cannot. And she knows the Soviet Union backwards and forwards. So I'm here to say that I'm not a Soviet Union scholar, but there are some things that we need to take into consideration when we're talking about the Ukraine. First of all, to your earlier point about the ideological framework of the world. The rest of the world is moving closer and closer to a realist way of seeing the world, which means that the nation state, the United States, Russia, China, France, we need to forget about these international alliances, and we need to worry about ourselves and ourselves only, and then working towards that end. After World War II, we see more of a liberalistic approach, which is why we get, the United Nations and the NATO and all of these military alliances, because we are in this framework of a more liberalistic society, which says that international world order is kept by a set of rules that everybody agrees on. We are now cycling back into this realist type of perspective on forget the international community and forget globalization. We need to be worried about our own country, and the pandemic has only heightened that reality for many people. The interconnectedness of especially the Western nations has made people feel like, well, why are we so connected? We do not need to be so connected. So what Putin is doing is in many ways what is it called? He's forwarding that thought process so that he can amass power
Yeah,
in
he's speeding it up. Right.
right. And what do I mean by that? He's taking advantage of this decline in democracy, the idea of realism, or the idea of nation states being in control of their own quote unquote destiny, right? He's taking advantage of that. But let's be clear about how he's doing it. If we remember, we go back to the 2016 campaign election, we saw a host of Russian bots. So let's first off acknowledge that Putin understands that armed conflict is not then that armed conflict is only acceptable once he has been able to infiltrate the information space and then get information that then complies with his narrative. Here's what I mean by that. If the United States is arguing about racism, or race is if race is being uncovered, and now the country of the United States is now fighting about racial status inside of the country, Russia doesn't have a quote unquote race problem. So now I can then forward my objectives in whatever region I'm in, while the United States is distracted with arguing about race, right? So what he's done, and we saw this, I mean, he's telegraphed his moves, if that makes any sense. And his first telegraphed move was going into Crimea. So before he goes into Crimea, he allows for these think tanks, these independent activists to go in and say, we need to be a part of Russia again. And so then when he shows up to then take them back, everybody's in agreement because the information has preceded the attack that he had already had planned. And once Crimea falls, and this is where Republicans were crying out and upset with Obama, if you don't protect Crimea, it's a slippery slope. He's just going to continue to advance, right? Takes Crimea in 2014. And where is he now? He's on the border, marching on the border in Crimea, trying now to get into Ukraine. Why? Because Ukraine is literally the gateway between the East and the West. And Ukraine has flip-flopped back and forth about joining the EU or then being in alliance with Russia. We know that Ukraine, for the most part, wanted to join NATO, right? They wanted to become a member in NATO, and the United States said, no. If we put you into NATO and then Russia sneezes too hard, we're going to be in an armed conflict. So we're not necessarily encouraged about then accepting you into NATO, but we will be more far accepting if you are then inside of the European Union. And the reason is that then economically there's too much then at stake then for there not to be this level of armed conflict. Well, you know, the Ukraine, just like any other country at the very high levels, has people that believe one way or believe another way. And the inside of the Ukraine, the prime minister there did not then ratify the vote to get inside of the EU. So now we're in a position where Putin can then exert his power while the West is still basically arguing about if democracy works and if democracy is essentially working for people of color. And so now he's created an environment where it's going to be a shootout, but what he's trying to do is entice the West to shoot first. I'm going to entice you to shoot first to then justify my own defense. Because Russians believe that in their general theory of war, that there's no such thing as peace. There's just walls between war. And the United States of America obviously does not believe that. That's not our posture or structure at all. So if you're dealing with someone who believes that there's no such thing as peace, there's just lulls between war, and I now see an opportunity to exploit your weakness, then I'm going to do so. But I know from an international perspective, it is not advantageous for me to shoot first, which is why Putin during the Olympics met with the president of China and said, you know, we're tired of these Americans, right? We're tired of these Americans, and we're tired of the West in particular, led by Americans, shaping the international community, and we need a shot at doing so. Well, let's remember that China is suppressing high levels of information to their citizenry. Same thing as Russia. Now, I'm not saying the United States is not stopping what we get to see. You just talked about being censored on YouTube, right? But the volatility or the likelihood or the expansion for us to even have this conversation is not even tenable in Russia or in China, right? And so one of the biggest reasons that then you can shape the narrative in these two places is because you control the information. Whereas here in the United States, it's not. You don't have the same ideological framework to do so. We do not agree with said censorship, right? The foundation of this country is on the opposite of that ideology. And so that's what we see Putin doing. Putin is being strategic. He wants to get the Ukraine back. Ultimately, he wants to have his Soviet Union back.
So what's the tension or the back and forth between the Prime Minister of Ukraine and Biden?
Well, the Prime Minister of Ukraine wants the West to send more troops. He wants to be treated as if he was a NATO ally, and he is not.
Okay.
And because we're not here, this comes with this Democratic Republican ideological framework when it comes to foreign affairs. Republicans are far more, if we had a Republican in office, regardless of who it is, the likelihood that we would have sent far more troops by now is high, right? Most of the troops that are there in Ukraine are from an advisory position. They are not in a position to fight as troops. We are sending them artillery, right? We put it like this: we're giving them all the tools to fight their own fight.
Right, which is what the thing was with Trump and taking the budget with Ukraine, right?
Which is why Ukraine was such a issue in the election, right? Which is why he wanted to highlight the fact that Biden's son was then working for the Ukraine. Why? Well, why was Biden's son working for the Ukraine? To quell down some of these tensions that we have, because many Ukrainians in high levels of government are like, why aren't you Democrats like the Republicans and send us what we need? We need bodies. We don't just need artillery. We need bodies. We need your expertise on the ground and to get into the shootout. And Democrats are saying, we're not trying to get into another endless war. We are not trying to relitigate the Cold War. We are not trying to. And if we think about this, if you back up for a second, that's exactly why Obama got caught with this whole red line in Syria and had to walk that back. Democrats are not in the business of trying to, quote unquote, run into everybody's fight. They are not trying to do that. We have seen that is to our detriment to do so. In Afghanistan, in Iraq, it has not been to our benefit, regardless of the oil that can be gained or whatever geopolitical advantage. It causes too much harm to us domestically to do so. That is the position of Democrats. And so since that's the ultimate position, Putin is going to test that. Are y'all going to allow us to kick the door down? And what we've seen from Democratic presidents when it comes to Crimea, when it comes to Syria, when it comes even to Iran, that we've allowed for Russian aggression to continue.
Wow. So, because on the channels, right, the media channels, one day it's like, it's not as serious as you think. Then the next day it's like, yes, it is. Then the next day it's not. No, it's no,
well, it is as serious as you think. Let's just be very clear. It is as serious as you think, but the media is vacillating. We're in a vacillating position because in many ways Biden is damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. Because if he does, then it gets us into a protracted armed conflict with Russia. And because Russia is in its realist framework, who knows if nuclear warfare is not on the table?
That's just the next thing I was going to say.
That's just the reality of it. They're the only country in the world that has as many nukes as us, if not more, is Russia, right? And so it is as serious, but the idea of can we get out of this diplomatically is consistently on the table, which is why in the media you see this vacillation, because there's back channel conversations that are being had. And the biggest thing is we cannot shoot first. As long as we don't shoot first, the international community will be behind us. Let's also remember that Germany has had a change in leadership, right?
Yeah, right.
During the Obama administration, we had Angela Merkel, who was the prime minister,
Mhm.
who her and Obama were, for all intents and purposes, on the same page. We have Macron in France. We have crazy Boris Johnson in the UK. And this new prime minister, his name is escaping me right now, in Germany. So the deck has reshuffled, even with our own allies, what they're then willing to do if we get in this protracted fight.
Right. No, that's some really good points. And then there's a new PM in Italy. You know, I mean, even though, you know, Dragoni or whatever his name is, but
Dragoni, yes. So what I'm saying is the deck has been shuffled, and since the deck has been shuffled, Putin is putting pressure to then see what is going to happen. And so the best thing for the United States to do is not shoot first, right? But let's also be clear: Russia's in this position, and they're pushing these buttons because they've been sanctioned into hell. They have their economic, there we go. Their economic prowess has been, for all intents and purposes, shut down. They are an oligarchy that has a group of high-powered leaders that then lead the country. What we know is for all intents and purposes, their money has been shut down in all international channels. So now their backs are really against the wall, right? The same way we got an Iran deal, because Europe decided to sanction Iran while we were sanctioning Iran, that then got Iran to pivot. Russia's back is against the wall, and what we cannot do is give them a reason to be in a shootout.
Thank you so much. You have broke it down so it could forever be broke. That's really good, information. We definitely keep an eye on this. The international lens is so important for Ark Republic listeners. I was listening to something and somebody said, I'm from wherever they were, somewhere on the East Coast. I don't care what happens to somebody in California. I said, you better care. You better care about what's happening to somebody in the Congo, because we all are connected, right?
Yeah, let me for those of your listeners that are in southern states, the reason why you should care is because most of the armed forces come from southern states. And most Black people in this country still live in southern states. So for those of you that are in southern states, if you look to your left and look to your right, there is some member in your family that is a part of the armed forces or who's already served in the armed forces. And we already know, just point blank period, we are who they come to when it's time to get down and dirty. They don't give us the credit. We can go back and look at military history. Every D-Day, every major conflict, we the ones show up the biggest, the baddest, and ready to kick the most ass. So when we act like we don't care about what's happening, we have to understand that our uncles, our brothers, our nephews, our grandsons are at stake.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your insight. We are talking with Dr. Nelson. I was going to say Janae, but we are talking to Dr. Sherice Nelson now on international affairs that we need to stay connected to. Thank you.
Let's embark on the Ark Republic to hear current news that's published. More than gossip and chatter, covering current affairs that matter. We talk issues with professional views, all keeping you in queue. We wanted a higher vibe for these days and times, the freedom voices and minds, reporting the sign of the times, so all can build. Let's shine, yeah.